Evening, everybody. Thanks very much for coming in, and welcome to our chat with radio host, ghost host as well, Sophia Temperilli. And I'm happy that I said your name right, because I've actually been practicing your name because I wasn't sure how to say it. So, um, thanks very much for coming in. You are the host of Ghost Host, and you're on every Saturday. Is that right? On liveparanormal.com.
Yeah, that's completely correct. You did say my last name right. So congratulations. My elementary school couldn't even spell it right. So you already got it there. But yeah, I am the ghost host on myparanormal.com, and I just recently celebrated 10 years on air.
Because you're a busy lady. You do a bit, with interviews and what have you, but you're also into paranormal.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty busy actually, oddly enough, since quarantine. I think just because I was younger, it was hard to get out and do a lot of investigations. But I've been fortunate enough since the quarantine happened that the Dark Zone has reached out and they've had a lot of virtual events and just recently started having some in-person events. So I've been busy doing that, and I'm just really lucky to just be able to get back out there and investigate. I live in California, so it's a little bit hard to actually get in haunted locations around here.
I've spoken to a few people from California and what have you, and I know the restrictions were quite bad. Same as over here. I think everybody was the same with lockdown over here. Everybody was kind of stuck in and nowhere to go. And as soon as they lifted the travel ban, that was it. Everybody was poof. It was like a mass exodus. Everybody was out. I know we were. I think we went out the day after they lifted the travel ban here. So it was a big relief. And know that you guys over there are the same. So how did you get into the paranormal? I know you've been into it for a very, very young age.
Yeah, so I think that I kind of have had this like paranormal connection from a time I can remember, but from a time I can't remember. But I mainly started at the age of 8 years old. My very first investigation was actually on the RMS Queen Mary, which is very close to my house. And my parents, they've always had an interest in this stuff. When they were dating in the 90s, they loved watching sightings and the X-Files, but they loved sightings the most. They were always fascinated by the psychic Peter James on there. So for their 10-year wedding anniversary, because my parents are a little eclectic, they're like, okay, let's do something different. Let's go on a ghost tour, because that's the normal response for your wedding anniversary, I think. And
It is different.
yeah. So they were looking around and my mom goes, oh my God, John, you have to come see this. The Queen Mary has ghost tours with Peter James. We have to go. And so they obviously went for their anniversary. And for some reason, I just got really jealous. I was like, I want to go too. Why can't I go? And they're like, sure. So they contacted Peter and said, is it safe for our 8-year-old daughter to go on the tour? And he said, yes. There's over 500 ghosts on this ship, and they are all my friends. So my parents took me on what would be his final tour in May of 2007, and I just fell in love with it. I had my first ghost experience that day, of course, that I can remember, and I just fell in love with the field. Shortly after that, we realized our house was haunted, and that's what I was kind of saying. I think I've had experiences from a time before I can remember, because I know that there were some instances that I don't necessarily remember, but were very strange to my parents, especially looking back, knowing our house was haunted. So it's kind of hard to say the exact time I started, but definitively 8 years old is how I got started on a tour.
Well, our daughter, she's 5, and she's right into paranormal. A lot of people. I mean, we've took her out investigations, not in the middle of the night or anything. We don't take her out at 2-3 a.m. in the morning. But we took her out a couple of graveyards and just and she gets excited when we pass. You know how some kids maybe get excited at a play park or play. If we're out in the car and we pass a graveyard, she go, "Oh, a graveyard!"
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I mean, 8 years old, you normally think of ghosts as just like Halloween and stuff, and I was like, I mean, my favorite movie when I was a toddler was Sleepy Hollow. So I think that's already it. And Scooby-Doo, I loved Scooby-Doo, specifically the Hex Girls. So I always had an interest in it. And yeah, when I was younger, even before I started going on actual ghost tours, the Ghosts and Legends tour on the Queen Mary is kind of like a fictionalized version with like steam coming up and everything, and everyone gets freaked out on it. And apparently I thought it was really funny. So I laughed the whole time, which I think, yeah, that's creepy. Like a 3-year-old laughing at something that's supposed to be scary. So I can definitely relate to that. I don't think it really ever changes.
Well, she's actually watching just now. That's her there. Hi, Button. She's actually sitting watching it in the other room. I took her out a couple of weeks ago, and she kept saying, "Dad, can you take me on an investigation? Can you take me?" So I took her out about 2 weeks ago, just a wee local graveyard nearby, and I took her near me and a K2 meter with us, and I let her go on me. You know, I was filming her and she was right into it, doing the investigation bit and what have you, and you know. I mean, the Queen Mary, 8 years old, you're on the Queen Mary. It's a legendary ship, you know. A lot of people have investigated, Patty included. I think Patty done it recently. How does it feel when you're on board the ship? What's the kind of atmosphere?
I mean, it's like stepping back into time. I mean, it's from, a time period that is really so hard to recreate. I mean, the things they used on the ship, particularly the decking and stuff, the woodside maple, is actually illegal to use anymore. I mean, so much of the stuff was used in the 20s. The ship set sail in the 30s, but it was being built in the 20s. So it's really just Art Deco. It's historical. It's really amazing to see all of it just still preserved and maintained. I know currently the ship is having some maintenance issues and the city is not really sure what to do with it. But since it's a piece of history, hopefully they're able to preserve it because it's from the time period of like ships like the Titanic and the Carpathia, and it's really the only one left standing. But beyond just its historical aspects, I mean, the haunted part of it is like no other. I mean, the pool area, lots of people talk about it and you would think it might be overrated, but it's so intense in there. There's a spirit actually in the dressing rooms there. I call him the Shadow Man, and he's one of the most intense spirits I've ever been around or seen. He is, I don't know, he's just very mean energy. And I just think that there's spirits on that ship that really are so specific to it. I mean, you have Jackie in the pool area, which is a little girl, but then you also have the Shadow Man. If you go down to the boiler room, it also has kind of like a intense energy, but the engine room, there's not really an energy to it. But by door 13, you can actually hear someone talking. You can't make out what they're saying, but you can audibly, without an EVP recorder, hear someone speaking. If you go to the propeller box, you can actually hear someone whistling, and there's no one around. So it's just amazing, just not only looking at it at face value, but deeper than that, all of the spirits still left on the ship.
I was going to ask you about the swimming pool area. I've watched a few documentaries on the Queen area, and the swimming pool area does seem to be, I'm not saying it's the most active place, but it does seem to be, quite active. I think there's been splashing and laughter as well reported as being heard there. I might be wrong. I'm just going on, what I've read and what I've seen on TV kind of thing. The door 13, now, I might be wrong again. Is that the door that a crew member was crushed?
Yeah, it is that specific doorway where a crew member was crushed. I don't know if he would be the spirit speaking, but it's definitely just an interesting area. There's an escalator right by there because you can kind of walk through there on their self-guided tour. And actually, my mom had an experience on that elevator, the escalator. She was sitting at the base of it and she felt like someone was watching her. And my cousin was behind her and he was not who she felt like was watching her, but my cousin felt the same thing. Like someone was standing there just like overbearingly staring at them. And for two people to experience that, I think separately is really remarkable. So it's just interesting, kind of the areas where there's certain things that you can talk about with other people who've had the same experiences.
As I mean, everybody's, we've all had that feeling in life, you think, there's somebody standing behind me or beside me. You say for two people to say the same kind of thing, then you know that, no less have pre-planned it all before they went, but that's very, very doubtful, for people to say the same kind of same thing. It's kind of hard to debunk, as we say,
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of weird, I think, unexplained things, specifically by door 13. I remember one time, I cannot for certain say this was paranormal, but I also can't rule it as normal either. We were walking through, my parents and I think my cousin was there, and about 2 or 3 other investigators. So we were walking through the 3-story exhibit hall. We were on the base level. We saw this boy. He was kind of rummaging through a box. I mean, he was like probably 18, 19. It's just not abnormal, someone just walking around. So we walk into the boiler room from there, the engine room from there, sorry. And he follows us. And of course, he's a young boy. So we're just like, okay, whatever. We get to door 13 though. And one of the people in our group wanted to turn around and say, hey, what are you doing? Why are you following us? And before they got the chance, he runs off, and it's an engine room. I mean, there's metal everywhere. You would hear someone running. You would hear if someone jumped over a banister to go hide, anything. When we turned the corner to go follow him to see what he was doing, there was no one there. And now we saw him like a normal person, but each of us saw him just slightly different. I saw him with like dark brown curly hair in a like navy blue hoodie. Someone else saw him a different way. We all saw him just slightly different, and none of us can explain how he would have gotten away from us so fast. I mean, there was nowhere for him to go, and you would have heard him running away.
And in fact, everybody saw him. It puts a lot of credibility behind it. And in fact, where did he go?
Yeah, and that's the thing for us. We were trying to figure out how he could have gone somewhere, where he could have gone. Hi, Paranormal Explorers. And just, how we each saw him just slightly different. I think that is really kind of the biggest part. And he looked so real that you would not have thought twice about someone joining the group. Like I said, 18, 19-year-old, 20, they just do what they want and go check things out. But the fact that he just disappeared on literally gangplanks that are metal is just baffling to all of us. So I think that was one of the weirder experiences on the Queen Mary. But I mean, I filmed with Ghost Adventures as a part of their Queen Mary episode. Tons of experiences in the pool area there. It's really just one of those places you can go to and you never know what you're going to get.
I think that's part of the buzz as well, that you don't. You're going to get, you could go and get nothing, or you could go and get a bag full, as we say in Scotland. I'm just going to say hi to everybody in chat for 2 seconds. Irene, Sarah, that's my partner. Laura's, she's one of our team. Wayne, Sarah, Paranormal Explorers. They're here as well. It's the validation that we love. That's Laura. She's one of our teams, one of our investigations. Everybody heard us whispering in real.
It's really weird, just to have that confirmation in real time. I mean, it's one thing when you capture on an EVP recorder. Like you said, I lived in a haunted house and we caught EVPs there, but none of them you could hear in real time, the voices. I mean, we did hear stuff you could hear real time, but when you actually are able to hear whispers and everything just in the moment, it's just so different because it's so much confirmation and you're able to just respond immediately like you would if you were having a normal conversation with a person who was living.
As you've got that couple of seconds of, what was that? Did you hear that kind of that the whispering, we got a sentence, and I sent it to about 11 different independent people. Didn't tell them anything about it, just he's going to listen to this and then come back to me, and they all said the same thing, and it was driving me nuts, absolutely insane what this lady was saying. It was very quick. It was clear, but it was quick, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I lost count, Sophie, how many times I listened to it with headphones on. And it was Jim Martin, who runs the Spiritual Realm Network. I sent it to him, and we had him on about a week and a half ago, and he broke it down on the live. And the lady's actually saying, "Is your light better?"
Yeah. I mean, it's just really weird when you have that. I mean, like I said, in the engine room with the Queen Mary, you can hear someone just talking, but you literally can't hear a word they say. And you can sit there and listen and try and hear it. And it's like, why? I just want to understand. But it's funny you brought up the light, actually. An EVP we caught at my old house that was haunted actually said, "I'll help you put those lights up," which, I mean, the story is a little bit more in depth than that, but it's just kind of funny that you got an EVP about a light, and because it's kind of random.
That's the thing about the paranormal. One of the things about paranormal I love, it is random. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to be said, or anything. When Jim says to me, "Is your light better?" It kind of stuck me. He says, "If you watch your footage," he says, "just before you get the settings, you move the EMF meter, and it goes to red. It lights right up." And then she asks, "Is your light better?" So that kind of made sense to us, but as you get this kind of buzz, adrenaline kind of, well, definitely got something. So obviously you started at 8 years old, Queen Mary, what an experience. And then how did that affect your normal life, for want of a better word? Did any of your friends think you're kind of, well, she's, stay away from her, she loves ghosts and that kind of thing?
I mean, I went to Catholic school, so, I mean, the kids didn't really believe me. I was a tomboy, though, so they didn't really interact with me in general. But I would say when I got older in high school, the same kids I had one girl say, like, "That's not real. I don't know why you're doing that." And that was like 4th grade. I transferred schools, so I didn't go to school with her again until high school. And we were doing a tour on a Queen Mary. Obviously, there was a scavenger hunt, and everyone's like, "Sophia, you want to be on our team?" I'm like, "Sure." But I remember just her saying, like, "I don't know why you believe in that." And then, all these years later, we're in high school, I'm taking them on an impromptu ghost tour because we had a school just field trip for art to the Queen Mary. And we didn't win the scavenger hunt because I was busy giving a ghost tour.
Because you see it in a lot of the, like movies kind of thing, the girl that likes the creepy house or talks to people in the canteen. There's no people there kind of thing, and everybody kind of shuns her and, get away from me. Do you think maybe that, we've encountered this a lot. A lot of people deny the existence of the paranormal because they don't want to appear they don't want people to laugh at them.
I mean, like I said, when I got to high school, it was a lot different. I did go from Catholic school to a public high school, so I mean that could have been the difference, but I don't really think it was. I think just with having, movies like The Conjuring, Ghost Adventures out there, Ghost Hunters, just so much in mainstream media that it's becoming more accepted. Because I think when the girl who had said that to me in elementary school asked me to be a part of her group in high school, I don't think she was just saying that because I knew what I was doing. I think people had more of an interest at that point. My friends in high school were completely into it. My best friend, she's gone on ghost hunts with me. She loves it too. My other friend in high school, he had a complete interest. I had a paranormal club in high school, and on the first day that had like 46 members. I mean, there was just a huge interest in the paranormal. And I think just with TV and video games, Universal Suspects becoming more out there and open, that people are starting to feel more comfortable with the subject and more open-minded to the possibility of there being an afterlife.
I'll read comment for you for then come back to that. So there's 2 children in the Periston room 101. I think Lane's on the Queen Mary.
I'm not sure if this would be the same story I heard. I know a lot of people say the most haunted room on the ship is B340. That's actually, now the whole ship's haunted, so I'm not saying the room's not haunted at all. That would be ridiculous. But a lot of people think that because Disney actually used to rent out that room and have props in there, so it got this kind of, telephone system. It went from a Disney haunted room to it being the most haunted room in the ship. So it's a little bit of a telephone thing there. What I was told by Peter James is that B474 is actually a room where a father went crazy, murdered his 2 children, and that's at least the story I've heard. I've talked to the ship's captain. I haven't been able to verify it, but if it's the same story I'm thinking of, then it could be B474, which is close to B340. So, yeah.
That's really, really sad. Kathy, I hear disembodied voices in my home, most common to a little boy called Mummy and my dog barking. We all hear them. You see, when we, just Sophie, when you hear these voices and you know through an app, we tend to favour the necrophonic app. It's not the app. You can hear it if the person's sitting beside you. That does give you a kind of, a buzz kind of thing, and it makes you hungry for more. I think it can make you greedy because you want them to say more and more.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I used to live in a haunted house, and the ghost was focused on women. So my dad had no experiences there. He had lived there. My dad's adopted, so his adoptive father was from Rome, Italy. He used to guard the Pope. He was a very religious man. But since, he had this very strong belief in Catholicism, I think he went a little bit angels and demons, since he did actually become diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. So my dad unfortunately had to move out at the age of 9. After my grandfather passed, my dad got the house, moved back in. And so that was the house I was raised in. My dad was semi-raised in it from birth until 9 years old. I was raised in it. And so when I was about 9, I realized, I just felt like I was being watched constantly. And I didn't feel comfortable in any room. It felt like there was eyes covering the walls. And I told my mom, after I had seen a man in her closet, I saw the ghost in her bedroom. And I'm like, Mom, there's a man in your closet. And of course, my mom has never told me I was wrong. She didn't know what to think because we had lived there for so long. But she was like, okay. And my dad was like, I wrote a book for a psychic. You're imagining it. Very open-minded for a guy that wrote a book for a psychic.
As you do,
Yeah. So, it kind of progressed from there. My mom was putting makeup on in her room, and she heard 3 knocks from the inside of her closet door. Now, obviously, no one's in her closet. And my cousin was there. She heard it too. And my mom grabbed an EVP recorder, and that's when we got that EVP that said, I'll help you put these lights up. Now, if you didn't understand that EVP, which makes sense, my mom had a chandelier sitting on a chair in her vanity that she had for years not known how to install, which would make you think, hey, friendly ghost. No, he was terrible. But that really is when the activity picked up. And for me, I was frightened. I couldn't go anywhere in my house. He was basically stalking me. And like I said, he was focused on women. So my dad had no experiences, but every woman that came in the house felt very unnerved. He would watch me sleep. He would watch my mom sleep. My cousin stayed over. She actually saw a man standing over her, full-bodied, watching us sleep. And by the time she blinked, he was gone. But, I mean, you don't forget someone standing over you like that.
No.
My mom's female friends from before we realized the house was haunted was like, your house has always made me extremely uncomfortable. But for me, I was terrified, as a 9-year-old, even though I was in the paranormal. When you live with it, it's so different. I couldn't go to any part of my house without being watched. And that's scary. I mean, I had to stop sleeping in my bedroom at one point because he had gotten so close. He had climbed my loft bed ladder and was this far away from me, watching me sleep. And up until then, I had thought I was safe because the loft bed was so high up. He couldn't see me. I would see him standing in my doorway looking for me, but he couldn't find me. And this was actually confirmed by a psychic who came in the house, and I hadn't told anyone at this point. And so I pulled my mom. I'm like, Mom, I have to tell you something. She said, not right now. We have company over. So I told her friend, I'm like, hey, the ghost was watching me sleep. So my mom's friend pulled her, and she's like, you have to hear what Sophia told me. So at this point, only I know, my mom's friend, and now my mom knows. And the psychic walks by my room and goes, there's a man on that loft bed ladder. And that was the last night I slept in that room. And for me, I was just horrified by the whole thing. But for my mom, she was like, I want to know more. She was the one grabbing EVP recorders, asking questions, trying to engage. And I think, it's hard when you're in a haunted house because there's people like me who wanted it to stop as a young child. And then there's people like my mom who want to figure out what exactly is going on. And I'm not sure if that helps or doesn't help in some cases. It's hard to say.
It's hard to say. I know exactly, I can totally understand your mum's frame of mind. We're doing a project just now, and this location just keeps, every time we go, we seem to get more, and it seems to get more, faster, basically. We don't need to wait around as long. And so it's got us, we do want to know more. We do. It's a big puzzle. We want to try and put the puzzle together, and we might never do it. The puzzle might remain unsolved. We are wanting to sort of put bits and pieces together. But we get back to what you were saying about the paranormal and maybe getting more accepted. Do you think it is more accepted now than it was, say, maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
Absolutely. And I think really the biggest way to be able to see that is shows that aren't, reality shows like Ghost Adventures on TV. You have scripted shows like Nancy Drew. Everyone knows Nancy Drew. Everyone knows she's a girl who solves mysteries. But now you look at the rendition of the CW's version of Nancy Drew. It's her solving crimes, yet every single one involves the supernatural, ghosts. I mean, the Vampire Diaries has had 2 spin-offs of it. And I think when you just look at all of these shows, fictionalized, supernatural or not, that keep coming about, it's because people have an interest and want to see it, whether it's, fictional stuff or real. They want to know more. They want to see more. And I think, 40 years ago, you didn't really have that. I think X-Files was kind of the first wave of that. And it's really just blossomed since then.
Yeah, I remember the Skulder and Mully. Skulder and Mully. And I mean, I grew up, excuse me, I grew up with horror films. I grew up with Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger and all the kind of, the first Poltergeist films. And when I was watching it, I was like, it's not real, it's Hollywood, it's made up for the movies. But I think as you get a wee bit older, and then I started to get into the paranormal and started studying, I started going to spiritualist churches and stuff like that. You think, maybe there is something to this,
And I think that's really the big thing. People, you watch shows like Teen Wolf and they see things like banshees, and then you want to hear about the folklore of banshees, which could lead you to, the Mexican folklore of La Llorona, the weeping woman. And these are all spirits, banshees and La Llorona. And people want to know, hey, what's the truth behind this? Because I think in a lot of myths and legends, there's a little bit of truth behind it. So people who are really interested want to sift through the fiction to actually get down to the reality.
Well, that's what we tried to do. Always rename our channels Paranormal and History. I mean, some of the stories you hear, you think, oh no, it's just made up. I'm not going to name any. Obviously, I don't want to cause any offence to anybody, but there are certain legends, stories out there that you want to get to the bottom of it. You say, well, this came from somewhere. It's like a tree. It's got roots somewhere, so let's try and find the roots. Basically.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's really what it comes down to, is just seeing things in the media. And not to mention, you have YouTubers and TikTokers now to really kind of give TikTok, you have these short paranormal videos, whether they're fake or not, people see them and think, oh my God, that's so cool. I want that too. You have these YouTubers that do these 2-hour-long YouTube video investigations, and people watch that and think, that's amazing. I want to do that. So you also have these kind of more connected avenues like YouTube and TikTok than, watching someone on TV, that bring people closer to saying, hey, this is accessible, this is obtainable. YouTubers don't have, most YouTubers don't have an extraordinarily big budget or network backing them. And people think I'm able to do this too. I was just talking to someone recently on an interview, and they were saying that kind of brings a lot of thrill seekers, which can bring some problems to the paranormal. But I think, it's just more of a kind of a rigid growth point where people, once they get past that, will start to kind of become more open to it after the thrill seeking. If they get, this spirit's voice one time when they're just trying to walk through an abandoned place, they're going to be like, oh my God, I want to know more. What was that? Or they'll be freaked out, but they'll never forget that memory. And then when someone else has an experience, they'll be able to say, I did too.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I heard the story the other week, and it was confirmed that it was an abandoned building. It was 6 uses went into this building. They heard this scream. The two people that sort of live in the area, they were walking up to the building and they seen these teenagers running down, and they says, we heard this scream. There's no chance we're getting back in there. Also, these teenagers went up initially for a wander, let's go and explore, see what happens. But once that happened to them, they had a totally different outlook.
Yeah.
They were saying you could see that they weren't joking. You could see the real fear in their faces. They couldn't wait to get back to their car and just go. They said, we're never going there again. So I think that can tip them over the believing edge, I have to say. But it's usually like YouTube, TikTok, Facebook. Way back, I'd enter with this. If you wanted to learn about the paranormal, you had to go to a library or watch a documentary on TV. But now we've got all these different social platforms, etc. And I think it's kind of 50-50. I think it's helped the paranormal, but, burdened it in another kind of way. As in, you do get a lot of thrill seekers. You get a lot of people who really aren't interested in the paranormal, but I saw it on Facebook. I'm going to go and try it.
Yeah. I think it helps. I think really the hardest part is when you're watching things either on TV, YouTube, TikTok. This is hours of investigating condensed into, at the most, I think I've seen a 2-hour YouTube video, which is still, 8-9 hours condensed into 2. And so people watch this and think, oh my God, this is the most exciting thing I've ever seen. But in reality, sometimes you catch nothing for 9 hours. Sometimes you get a lot of stuff, and sometimes you get a lot and it seems like you've caught nothing for 9 hours, but you have to go take 8 hours to go sift through all of that. So there's a lot more involved. And I think it's the behind the scenes stuff that people don't really realize or grasp that kind of hurts with the thrill seekers, just because they want more instantaneous gratification, which I understand. It's a lot easier that way. Lots of paranormal investigators would love that, just being able to hear it and not spend all that time sifting through. But I think if they also took the time to do it, they would get some really incredible stuff that would give them that thrill while also, helping them see other aspects to life. But I also think thrill seekers need to do it respectfully. I think there's sometimes that line that's crossed. They will go into buildings that may be abandoned, and first off, vandalism, but also not only that fact, it can be dangerous, not just the spiritual aspect, but the physical aspect. These buildings sometimes are abandoned for a reason. So you put yourself in a real liable situation and a very dangerous situation if you're not careful. So I think the instant gratification is, curiosity killed the cat. It's really something you have to be more wary of and realize you need to be respectful not only to these people that have passed on, but also to the location itself.
Exactly. As you say, respectful to people that passed on, but also to the location, because this location was once their home.
Yeah.
Was once, the place that they felt safest in, spent maybe a lot of time in. So you do need to be respectful. And as you say, a lot of the thrill seekers, they want that instant, I think a lot of people think they walk into a graveyard and, you know, they just want to walk in a graveyard and bang 2 minutes where something happens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they see a ghost or they hear something. But as you say, you can sit there for 3 or 4 hours and nothing, you know.
Yeah.
It's having the actual patience. But we've done it ourselves. You know, we've been patients and we've had loads of activity and we've been back again and we're sitting there and you're like that, kind of, you know, nothing. And it is frustrating, but it's part and parcel of what we do. And behind the scenes, there's a lot of people who don't actually see what goes on behind the scenes. Planning out, if you find a location, you know, getting your team together, make sure everybody's available, time, travel, you know, filming, whatever, coming home, editing. Sarah does all our editing because, to be honest, myself and Tech do not get along. We're just not friends, basically. And I've spoke to people and they say, well, I sat for 6 hours editing to get a 5-minute video.
Yeah, I mean, it really is like that. And I think, you know, just kind of the hardest part too with investigating, at least for me as an investigator, if I kind of look at it is if I was them, if I was dead, you know, I probably would, if I'm not willing to talk, I don't want someone trying to talk to me for 4 hours because I'm clearly just not in the mood. So I look at it as, you know, what would I want to deal with? Not someone talking to me like it's an interrogation, not being antagonized, but also if I'm not getting anything in a certain spot, just, you know, leave, go check a different area. And 2, if you go back to the same location like 2 weeks later, you could have the most activity in the same spot, you got nothing. So I think it just is kind of really just up to the spirits. I mean, you can have all the tech in the world, but it comes down to what they want and what they need at that particular point in time.
Exactly. I agree with you 2,000%. It's down, we've said this in Many Alive, it's down to if a spirit wants to talk to you, then they will. To me, there's no difference between a spirit and us except we have a physical body. They don't anymore. And, you know, in life, you know, physical life, if you don't want to talk to somebody, then you know, talk to them. And it's just, you know, once you pass over, you're the same person. And if you keep getting people coming in, you know, every day asking the same thing over and over, you're like, oh, you know what? No, I'm not doing it today. I'm taking it.
They're like, please stop. I'm already dead. I mean, that's just the way I see it, at least. I think you have to look at the way you would want to be treated in the same situation. And, you know, sometimes if you're just not getting anything, it is what it is. You can't squeeze that lemon anymore. It's done. And I think it's just really just, you know what you're going in there for and what you want, but you also have to look at what they want because it's really a two-way street there. And I think, you know, sometimes ghosts just don't want to interact with people. Sometimes they do, but just don't know how. And so it's just kind of finding that middle ground where you're able to figure out a way that works for them to communicate and, you know, also giving them their space and not making them feel like, you know, a caged animal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Warren's got a comment. I think it comes down to people being more open-minded. Normal people having experiences they can't explain, not necessarily paranormal, but something makes them think, well, maybe there is more.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it really is just people taking an experience and becoming more open-minded. You know, my aunt, I love her so much. She's so supportive of me. She is a very logical person. She does not really believe in the paranormal, but if you talk to her about it, she will swear to you that she had an experience at a hotel in Chicago. And I think that even though she wants to be able to explain it, there's just a part of her, if she's listening, she might disagree, but I think there's a part of her that, you know, thinks there's more out there and believes there's more out there. So, you know, if you're watching, it's at least what I feel.
They love you. That's what you're meant. Love you.
I love you. Yeah. So I mean, that's what I think. I mean, she's very logical, and I know that like we went to Monterey once, and she put me in this bed and breakfast, and it was so just creepy looking. It was such a creepy place. I'm thinking, why did she stick me in this turret room? It was just like so Victorian and just like creepy. I'm just like, well, why? I mean, I love being an investigator, but I have a little bit, I like where I sleep to be not haunted. And
You're like,
so,
time out.
yeah, for me, living in a haunted house, I was kind of just like, okay, I want like a little bit of separation. So she puts me in this bed and breakfast with them, and I go up to the owner when we're checking in. I'm like, hey, is this place haunted? And I could just see her going. She's just looking at him going, and he's like, no. And I'm like, okay. But I asked him, and you could just see her just like, no, not again.
Because you need that wee bit of, I think you need that wee bit of time, a wee bit switch off time. Paranormal is where I get 7. I get nothing. 7 out of 10 investigations and spend hours there. They are bang on. You can do a lot of investigations and you just get absolutely nothing, and it is frustrating. The comments, I'm trying to keep up with the comments. My comments are slowing down and then they're speeding up for some reason. Just hi everybody in chat. All the people who just joined us as well. You are totally, utterly welcome. As you say, you do need that wee bit of time out. How easy do you find to switch off to get me time?
I mean, I think it's really easy. I'm a gamer, so I'm just in general pretty laid back. If I'm on an investigation, that's usually what I try and do. So my state of mind, I think overall doesn't change. It just what the task at hand changes, because like I said, if I was dead, I want someone to talk to me more laid back than, feeling like it's an interrogation. So I think my mindset overall is kind of the same. I just look at it like, okay, what am I here to do? What questions do I want to ask? Similarly to my radio show. And then when I go home, and I just kind of want to sleep.
You always feel drained. I know we do. After you've been out on an investigation, the next day you just get kind of no energy. You just don't want to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me at least, depends on where I am, and just, I did an investigation in Montana and in January, and we caught a lot of incredible stuff, but a lot of the stuff we caught was really dark, and I don't really deal with darker stuff just because I don't think I'm the person to handle that. I think there's better people out there that have more experience with stuff like that. And that for me, it was just kind of overwhelming at that point in time, just from a long day and then, getting stuff that I couldn't really explain. So I think it really just depends on the situation to at hand and what you're getting at that time and what your state of mind is afterwards.
Well, we were out last Saturday. We were out for about 7 hours, and the Scottish weather beat us, eventually.
Yeah.
As it always does. Well, the weather's been not too bad, maybe the past month or two, but Saturday we planned an overnight investigation and we got to about 3 in the morning, I think, and the rain, the place just opened. We thought, the place we're investigating has no roof on it.
Mm-hmm.
So really, sensible to get back in and try again, but the next day we just had no energy. But a couple more questions before I cover your radio show. I've asked a few people this, like, what do you think of the word coincidence when it's used in the paranormal?
What's the biggest coincidence in the paranormal?
No, you get a lot of these, if you go in an investigation and say you get 3 or 4, things happening you can't explain, a lot of people will say, oh, that's just coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
I
think definitely there's, and not really a fine line, but I think there is a line between stuff that is debunkable and not. I think, like you were saying, normal people having experiences. I think in a lot of cases, like Taps used to do this back in the day, they would go in and assess the house first, the plumbing, the doors, because there are things that can easily be explained. And I think it's just trying to decipher that and make sure that what you get, I think that's one of the things about investigating that personally I find the most helpful is being able to have another person with you, like we were talking about earlier in the show, to make sure it's not a coincidence. But also when you get something, really assess it and think, is there a chance that this is not paranormal? And maybe confirmation bias or something that's a natural element. And I think with coincidences, you can't just brush everything off as that, because then what's the point of being there? The ghost could be talking to you and you're just like, no, that's not real. But also you don't want to look at everything and say that's irrevocably a ghost. That is 100% everything is paranormal. So I think you really just have to go in and not say everything's a coincidence, but also not just say, hey, yeah, this is for sure haunted every place I go into.
Exactly. I think there's, no disrespect to them. There's a lot of people out there who do go in and investigate that's paranormal, that's a ghost. Everything that happens to them is paranormal. I was out with a friend a couple of months back, we went to an old power station. It's a huge, we were at the front and he was doing a live and we heard what we could describe as a banging noise coming from the rear of the building. So, this place is in the middle of nowhere. Thought there's nobody here that can be making that noise. The building's been empty for about 40 years. I went to look and it turned out it was a massive room at the back and it was about 4 or 5 different drips of water were hitting this bit of metal at the same time, and it was creating a kind of echo. And this is the bang we were hearing. So I went back around and I said, listen, it's no spirit, it's water round the back.
And that happened to me recently, about 2 weeks ago on an investigation. Hey, Andy. So we were investigating the LA Police Museum. Hi, Martin. And, we were walking around with K2s and we were getting really faint K2 hits just in really random areas. There was nothing around and you would just think, okay, this is really strange. And so I was trying to think to myself, like, other people were like, okay, I think there's something here. And I'm trying to think to myself, okay, but there's nothing there. There's no displays with anything that I feel like would carry residual or anything. So I'm thinking, okay, we're on the 3rd floor. There's electrical in the flooring because it's the ceiling of the floor below. So I said, are we sure it's not just electrical from the floor below? So they take the K2, set it on the ground, then you get a steady hit. It's still about 3, but instead of flickering at 3, it's solid 3. And I'm like, okay, that's why it's so random. So it's just being able to say, hey, this is a K2 hit, or this is electrical and can just be explained by electrical in the flooring.
Exactly. A couple of comments to pop, Sophia. Obviously, after an investigation, you feel tired, drained and what have you. Usually all your concentration levels are high, you get drained. Laura, St. University always tries to find reason for everything before classing as paranormal, which is true, Yes. You need to. Andy and his family, they moved over to Las Vegas. They're from Yorkshire. They moved over to Las Vegas about 4 or 5 weeks ago because Andy's job. He's a good friend of ours. So the Haunted Hunts is a show that's over here. And I've just brought out a season 4. So all I'm going to say, Andy, is I've not watched all of season 4, so no spoilers. I've watched 3 episodes so far, so I'm just going to ignore that comment. I'm just sorry, Sophie. I had to get out. Sorry, moved to Canada. Not Vegas yet. I mean, he's still in America.
I'm in California too. We are not as hot as Vegas, so that's a plus.
I know he was at the Hollywood sign the other day there because he kept putting pictures up, and he really needs to stop wearing shorts. No offence, Andy, but stop wearing shorts, please. Or keep it off because it's not the sort of nicest thing. But I mean, as Laura says, and I mean, other people are saying Mojave.
Yeah, that's a hot area. Yeah, so I take it back. I'm sorry, Andy. It is hot like Vegas.
Yeah, he's a really decent guy, he's Andy. But I mean, debunking is an important part of the paranormal, and I think it's, even though we believe in, there's life after death kind of thing. Do you think it's important to be skeptic as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. I do. Because like I said, I'm trying to, as an investigator, I 100% believe in the paranormal with my experiences and just, the things I've captured on other investigations. But at the same time, I want to know what I'm getting. I can show to someone and say, I believe this is paranormal evidence for this reason, instead of, going back and saying, there's a doubt in my mind. Like I said earlier about the guy near door 13, I think it was a really weird incident that I can't explain, but I also cannot 100% tell you that it was paranormal. And I just feel like if you're telling stories like that, you need to make it clear, I can't for sure tell you that. And so I think when you do an investigation, it's good to have skepticism, so that whatever evidence you're providing to someone, whether it's a homeowner or showing other people just what you've captured, it's something that you have faith in as well. Because, the paranormal is not an exact science. And it's really something, that is, you have to believe in. And I think that if you don't go in there with skepticism, then you're showing people stuff that, if you can't verify it yourself, then how can they also believe what you're providing them?
Exactly. An important word, this is just my opinion, an important word in the paranormal is think. As we think this is, or I think this is, because you're not actually stating, you're just giving your view on it. I think there's too many people out there label something right away as paranormal when maybe they're over keen to get evidence. I don't know, no offence to them, but I think there's a word again. I think the word "think" is an important word in the paranormal, basically. And as your personal doubt makes the paranormal fun, it forces you to go back to the books and research. I love having that doubt.
Yeah, and like for me, another example of that is I was at the Glen Tavern Inn in Santa Paula, California. For anyone who's in California, you should definitely check it out. It's a really cool location. And I was there for the first time when I went in 2015, maybe. And I'm walking down. I love film. I think it's amazing. And in Santa Paula, it's a really just odd building, the Glen Tavern Inn, and for some reason they just have a bunch of old movie posters around. I honestly couldn't tell you why. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go check out these posters. That's really cool. So I'm walking down this hallway, which is on the first floor to the right-hand side, and my mom's walking with me. And each step I take, my throat's feeling tighter and tighter. And for me, I'm thinking, okay, it's just a stuffy, weird hallway. That's just what I'm gonna explain it off as. My mom's like, I'm gonna go ask the front desk guy what's happened down here. And I'm like, you don't need to do that. So she goes up to the front desk attendant, who was another paranormal investigator, Brandon Alvis, and she goes, what happened down that hallway? And he goes, oh, the innkeeper 5 years prior had hung himself. So the tightness I was feeling around my neck was the groundskeeper who had hung himself.
That's really, really weird, Sophie, because Laura, who's in the chat, she's on our team. We did a location one night, and she had pain. She was complaining of a sore neck, and it turned out, we found later on after the time, somebody that where we were standing, somebody that actually hung herself in this graveyard.
Yeah, it's amazing when you pick up stuff like that. And, and that's why I say go in with skepticism, just so you don't just say, hey, that automatically must mean it's haunted. But when you have, confirmation like that from someone who works there, I think it's really just makes it more solid that, this was a paranormal experience.
Laura says the weirdest experience she's ever had. There was, we found
Same
out
here.
that I mean, it happened to me as well months and months ago. I was in a graveyard with a friend, and I was drawn to one particular side of the graveyard, and I could feel kind of anxious and breathing. And I says to the guy I was with, I says, something happened down here to a young man. It's something to do with his breathing. He says, he was strangled to death. And he says, and there was a load of houses, a few hundred yards. He says he was in one of the houses. He was attacked and he was strangled to death. And as soon as I moved away for that particular bit, I was fine,
That's what happened at Glen Tavern. As soon as I walked out of that hallway, I was fine. And I had told myself, my throat's getting tighter every step I take. I don't want to find out what happens when I walk to the end of this hallway. And that's when I said, Mom, I'm done looking at the posters. Let's go back. And then she was like, I'm going to go find out. And it's definitely one of my weirdest experiences in the paranormal. And I think it's the things like that that really just make it worthwhile. The things that you can't explain that, I don't want to necessarily say I felt someone, how they hung themselves, but so you want to be able to explain it away, but you can't. And that's what makes the paranormal so interesting, is the things that you may want to explain away, but you just have no logical explanation.
Exactly. As you said, it makes it so interesting. And Kirsty's Andy's wife, she fell ill. Went to Jewish Temple. We didn't know the background at the time. Afterwards, we found out why. Research and experience. It wasn't a nice place. But a lot of people don't get it. They don't know how the paranormal can affect you, how spirit can affect you and make you feel. We're at a location and there's an old staircase, and on the second level you get a kind of sicky feeling. But as soon as you get by up to the third level, you're totally fine. It's just this one level that you feel sick. I need to put this one up. Laura, she actually, the same night she got a bottom felt that night.
Yeah, I mean, it's the weird things in paranormal you can't explain. Like I was at the LA Police Museum a couple weeks ago, which I mentioned earlier, which was a Darkstone event. And we were doing the Estes method, which is where someone puts on a blindfold and headphones, which they can hear a ITC device cycling through radio stations, and then something that, deafens the noise around them. So it's basically kind of like 11 in Stranger Things, how she goes completely void of certain senses. And we got someone in our group had asked, how old are you? Now, we're in a police museum that was an actual police station, but obviously officers aren't children. People in there shouldn't be children. And we got the number 12 right after it said, how old are you? We got 12, and we're just like, okay, that's weird. Okay, fine. And we just figured it was nothing. We go up to the third floor because we were at the bottom level when this happened. And we're walking around. We're not really getting anything at all on the third level. And we're just not even really investigating because there was just nothing there at that point. The group prior to us had a ton happen. So I think the ghosts were just worn out. And so we were looking at the exhibits, and someone looked at these letters on the wall, and it was confession letters from a man who had kidnapped a 12-year-old girl and killed her.
Right.
But having specifically the word 12 was, really crazy. I would love that, Bo.
Are you going to be as long? But you need to make sure, Sophie, that he doesn't wear shorts.
It's California. Everyone wears shorts. I can't fault him for it.
Once you see the photographs, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Once you see the photographs, as long as being blindfolded, your senses are heightened so much. That is very true. One of Laura's I'm there, so my eyes work extra hard. I found that one of our American team, Jennifer, she relies on audio more than video, and she'll sit with the headphones on, and she says to us, try it. And so I did. I was lying in my bed one night, and plugged the headphones in, I just put the phone away and just listened. And it's amazing the things that I heard that I hadn't picked up before, or that we hadn't reacted to on the actual investigation. We've tried the Ex's method, and we two our news members, and we had, I would say, success. You know, we did some good results with them. I'm not a big fan of tech. We tried recently using just a compass. We've not had any joy with that yet, but we're going to keep, we're going to keep at it. As you say, Sophie, the paranormal, that's what makes it so fascinating. It's not a definite science. We don't, nobody's got all the answers, and maybe we never will have all the answers, but that's what makes it interesting. So that's why I know there's a lot of tech and different gadgets out there. No offence to anybody who uses them. We're going to try and go old school. What's your opinion on the different kind of gadgets, etc., that's out there now? Obviously, in the last maybe 10 years or so, it's kind of way more advanced now than it was back then.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. There is a lot of, tech out there. I think tech's really cool. It's really expensive, so I don't really have a lot of it. But I think it can be useful. I know people find the X Connect really controversial because, who exactly knows what it's picking up. We had some really interesting responses with it at the Dark Zone event on the Queen Mary. So I did find that really fascinating. We used it on Ghost Adventures on the Queen Mary, and I thought that was really cool. But I also feel like besides tech, some of the best equipment you can use is just your own senses and, just basic things. I use dowsing rods. Hey, George. So, just using simple things, I think can sometimes be overlooked, but it really can sometimes be just the best method. Like I said, walking down the hallway at the Glen Tavern Inn, I feel my throat tighten. I don't think a meter is going to pick up an experience like that. But, it's also helpful to kind of, confirm, is there electrical on the floor? Is this actually hit from something else? So I think having a happy medium between the two is really the best.
Penny's put a good comment. Just stick up here. I watched live the other day. The analog valve radio and voices were coming through using Marcelo technique. It was amazing. But there are that many different gadgets and stuff out there. But as you say, so, and I agree with you. Your senses are the best thing. You can have, 10 different gadgets around you, but as you say, they don't pick up your senses. They don't pick up what you're feeling and what have you. They might be able to back up what if you pick up something, say the K2 goes off on command, but they can't pick up your actual feelings. So just, I know you're a busy lady, but I've been watching her time. I've not even hit on your radio show yet. Now, you're a host of a radio show and you've interviewed, don't know, a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people. You go to Patty Negri, you name it. How did you get into that side of it? How did you become the ghost host?
So I lived in a haunted house, like I said, between the ages of 9 and 11. Then I moved out. But I had these experiences at such a young age. I started in the paranormal at such a young age. There were still really aren't any kids in the paranormal. As it's becoming more accepted, I'm seeing, families start to investigate more. But when I started, there just wasn't. And I had these experiences that I couldn't go to school and talk about. No one's going to get it. I can go on the street. People still may not get it. But I wanted to find other people my age who would understand what I'm going through. I didn't find that, but I was, asking my parents, hey, I really want a radio show. I want to see if there's more kids out there like me. And my dad was like, I had never stuck with anything before, like tennis. So they were like, okay. And Rob Sarek, the site founder of liveparanormal.com, had been offering my dad a radio show since he co-authored Heaven Can You Hear Me by Peter James. And he was like, look, I do not want a show, but my daughter does. And Rob was like, sure. So I started at 12. My first guest was Alexandra Holzer, the daughter of Hans Holzer. And from there, it just really took off. I've had some amazing guests on. I've been fortunate enough to have so many Travel Channel guests on to hear about their shows, like Destination Fear, Kindred Spirits, Ghost Brothers. But I've also had some really amazing investigators on. George, who is in the comments, will be on upcoming April. Busier, she is the psychic medium of New Jersey. So I've just been really lucky to meet some amazing people and make some great friendships through my show. But that's how it started. I was looking for people my own age, and here I am 10 years later.
And you're still, because you have, also I've skimmed through your life, shall we say, not in a good way. I mean, not in a freaky way or anything. And you do get about. You do a lot of travel and what have you, got your various shows and stuff. How do you go about putting your show together? I mean, I've spoken to some people before and think, oh, radio's easy. Television is where the hard work is. But I tend to agree, no disrespect to TV people, but I think radio can be just as hard as TV.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I started at 12, so my dad helps me to this day with my shows. He helps book the guests and just get everything together. So I've been very lucky to have his support. But really, it's just getting the guests, making sure we have questions for them, and just making sure we have a show that's enjoyable, not only for the guests themselves, but the audience, because I don't want it to feel like I want the guests to be able to get their information out in a way that they feel like they've been able to either promote their team or let people know about their upcoming show, but also not just make it rigid. I think I was like that a little bit when I was 12 because I was just starting out. I wasn't really sure what to do. But at 22, I just try to make it a little bit more free moving while also still just making it informational.
Mm-hmm. Really much more is all for the guests to keep it interesting, in my opinion. No, I do agree. As you say, as we get and as we just spoke prior to us going live about, hey Sky, hope you're back 100%.
Hey Sky.
I still need to arrange with you and Matthew to get you on, honey. It's good to see her pop up in the chat. As I say, it's keeping your guests interested, it's keeping your audience interested in working out what can we ask. So see, we used to ask a list of questions, but we scrapped that after about 2 or 3 lives because we found it was too regimental, too formal. And see, we had 20 questions. Once you got to the 20th question, that was it. You were sitting there. You might just have been on the air for maybe half an hour, depending on how your guest answered your questions. And you're left with, as you say, dead air, because you nothing else to ask,
Yeah, I think that was a lot harder for me in the beginning, too, because my radio show is an hour now, but when I started out at 12, we were doing 2-hour shows, so I had 2 guests. And like I said, when I was 12, I was very just, asked the questions because I wasn't sure what I was doing. Obviously, that's changed in 10 years. But it can be hard. Not everyone's comfortable with radio or talking about themselves. So I try to make guests as comfortable as possible. Sky was recently a guest on my show. So, I'm able to talk to so many amazing people. But it's really about making sure, they feel comfortable enough to want to talk, but also, just, like you said, it's hard sometimes because, sometimes people, like you were saying earlier, just say no to a question. And it's like, okay.
That's it, no. Yeah. It's a no, yes, I don't know. You think, you're giving me nothing here, give me something, throw that a wee bit further in. George has got a comment for you. Are you in LA? Go Giants against Dodgers tomorrow.
Yeah, I am at LA. I'm a gamer, so I don't really watch sports. I have made people mad once because I was 11 and I was joking and I said go Packers on a post and I made a bunch of people from Chicago mad. And then I was watching the news the next day and it was apparently the like Bears or some, I don't know who plays for Chicago, but the Chicago football team versus the Packers. And I understood why all these 20-year-olds were mad at me. And I was like, oh, okay. That's how uninformed I am.
So that's kind of like me with you call it soccer with football over here.
Yeah.
I don't have a clue. I'm a Formula One man. I love my Formula One.
I love my Call of Duty.
Oh well, you and Sarah we got on well. She likes her games and stuff. But have you ever had a radio show where you've had, as they say, dead air, where you've kind of ran out of questions and you're sitting there and you're kind of thinking, right, where do I go?
Yeah, gosh, these are tough questions because I feel bad for like the people. I have one show that comes to mind, and it wasn't dead air, but I had this one guest on, and I was like 13, and she didn't want me to ask questions, and she was a little, I don't want to say like aggressive, but she knew what she wanted out of the show, which wasn't exactly how my show actually runs, which made it very difficult to do. And since I was 13, I'd only been doing it like a year. I wasn't sure what to do. So my dad kind of had to take over. So I think things like that are a little bit hard, not necessarily running out of questions, but when the guest has a different vision for how things run. I don't know how to explain it better. It was a really interesting experience.
It does. It kind of. I mean, we've had a couple of lives. I know you went all glitchy there for a wee second, and my wee Wi-Fi signal came up. It kind of went off fuzzy there, but I think it's fine. It always worries me when the Wi-Fi signal, the wee sign comes up. You think, but it's away, so it's all good.
Yeah, and I've had shows like that too, where my audio has just cut out completely and my calls dropped. So, those are hard shows too, not just, where questions stop, but, luckily my dad, his line will be there because you don't want the show to end completely, but also, my call just cut out and I have to re-call in.
Well, that's it. It happens. I think one of the funniest moments for me, Wayne, who was in the chat, I don't know if he's still in the chat, the first time, Wayne's from London, and the first time he was on, we'd only been on about 10 minutes, and he disappeared. He pressed the wrong button on his tablet, and I was left on the panel myself with no idea where Wayne went, and you're kind of sitting there, and you think, right, I mean, he was only away maybe 3 or 4 minutes, but it was the longest 3 or 4 minutes ever.
Yeah, we've had a guest accidentally sleep through my show once, which life happens. No one's mad. We've also had scheduling. And George, you're fine. Don't worry about it. We love guests that talk because the show's about getting to know you. But we've also had guests where, particularly one time we had a Travel Channel guest on, and they called in literally after the show ended because the coordinator for the guest spot over at Travel had given them the incorrect time. So we were trying to fill in for that like 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And they were waiting because they didn't know the show had happened. So we've had that. Those are usually kind of strange shows when people miss them. And then we usually wait like 30 minutes. And then if no one's on, then we end the show. But it doesn't happen often. But I think, it is what it is. It's live radio.
That's and I think it makes it more fun because you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, one night we had the CRA, the film company on, and I think we had 5 or 6 of them on the panel, and my chair broke. And I ended up on the floor, but on my way down, my foot hit the camera, the plug for the camera, and pulled the camera out. And, you know, I managed to get back on. To sit in a makeup box or something. I managed to get back on. But I watched it back, and you Craig Arns, David Espinosa, they're sitting there, and there was another 2 or 3 folk on. And I watched it back, and, you know, we're talking away. Hey, Mandy. And I just disappear. Sarah was on, but just disappear. And Craig's with that, well, I guess we're going to do the show then, because they've left. You know?
Yeah.
And it was funny, but we've been fortunate, no doubt you have as well, Sophia, that everybody we've met, they're all genuine people.
Yeah, like I said, I've been really lucky with my show to have made so many great friends through it. Sky, George, who are in the comments. George will be on soon. Sky was on recently. They're both amazing people. So I'm just really fortunate with the people I've met in the paranormal and just all the friendships I've made through my show. I think it's really important when you're an investigator to be able to collaborate. I know a few years ago it was more like territorial, but I think having more collaborative is better because, you know, your way might not work at a location, but what they're doing might work perfectly. And I think it's just kind of, like you said, trying to find middle ground and figure out what's best for the spirits. And that doesn't always mean your way is the best, or you might hear something someone says and think, oh, wow, I could have never thought of that. Or something someone says changes your perspective on what your thoughts on the afterlife are. So I think working with other people in the field is really such an important part of being an investigator.
It is, you know, you've hit the nail on the head, as we say in the UK. It is so important. I mean, we only started this channel a year past in July, and the amount of amazing people that we have met, obviously yourself included, and the amount that we have actually learned and shared, you know, over that time, just be sitting, talking to people, and as you say, you might have one way of doing something, somebody else has got another way. So, what, I never thought of doing that. You're not copying them, you're just going out and trying it. And if it works, it works. You know, it's a great way of learning. And we've made a lot of really amazing friends as well. Mandy Cummings there, she was on 2 weeks ago. She's coming back. She's part of Ghost Sisters. They're coming back in November to see us again. But that's the thing we like about the paranormal is it's all genuine people.
Mm-hmm. And that's really the important part is, you know, having people you can trust as investigators. So, you know, if you walk into a location, if I see something and you say you saw it too, I trust that actually happened. And, you know, just as Laura was saying, and it's really just, I think when you're investigating, it's I love you too, Sky. But it's really just, you know, knowing when you walk into that location, it is someone you can trust. If it's an abandoned building, you know that person has your back to make sure you're not tripping over something. I had one guest on. This was of no fault to her own, but she sat on a bench and like a rusted needle went up like in her butt cheek. And it's knowing like you can trust someone and rely on them in these situations, that they're there for you. With the ghosts, but also the physical. And I think it's really important to have that bond with other investigators so you know that you're secure in anything that's happening that night.
Exactly, but then the other side is you also the investigators who are just out for an ego trip.
Yeah.
They're out for their own personal gain, and you know, so unfortunately, it's like everything in life. You get the kind of people that are sort of everywhere. So just before I know we're going to run for an hour, but can I run over? But however, as what is, you've interviewed a lot of people. I'm going to put you on the spot. Who did you enjoy most interviewing?
Oh God, I've had a few people ask me that, and I'm like, I don't know how to answer. I've had so many amazing guests. Gosh, I don't. So hard. I know one of my the most excitement I felt during the show was when I interviewed Glozell Green from YouTube. I was like 13 and I just absolutely adored her. But I've also, you know, been lucky enough to interview, you know, Destination Fear, Dakota Layden, I've known for years. He's really great. I've just had so many great guests. Like I said, I have an amazing time anytime I get to interview anyone who I'm friends with in the field, because it's just like talking to your friend, and I think it makes the show so much more fun and easygoing.
It's a question I asked because if I was asked that, I couldn't answer it. I would say, I don't think I've had a few memorable ones, not for the right reasons, but however, but there's basically, I've enjoyed interviewing everybody because it's everybody seems to connect. It's a good chat. You have a laugh. There's Laura saying, you could, it's me. Laura's one of your team. She stays about 2 minutes away, in fact, 2 minutes in the car away. And you need to agree with her. She's a fantastic lady. Well, all the team is, So what's next, just before we wind up, what's next on your calendar?
So next upcoming, we have Michael Mccarty. He's an author on. He will be on this upcoming Saturday. The Saturday after that, we have on the Psychic Housewife of New Jersey, April. She's, like you said, amazing friend. She's always fun to have on. Then the 23rd, we will be having on Andrea Perron, who is the original family member of the Conjuring House, the story that started it all, which you can see in movies. She was a part of the Warren case. So she'll be talking about the upcoming Dark Zone event, which I will also be making kind of like a cameo on. So that will be sometime between the 29th and the 31st is when the event is. And I'll be showing up for like a half an hour sometime in those days.
That's the Ghost Host on liveparanormal.com.
Yes, and also I will be on the Horsefly Chronicles radio with Julia Siracusa on October 25th.
So you're going to have a busy lady, especially in October. Do you find October's busier than any other month?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it is. Like I said, with the pandemic, things really picked up. It kind of started in, thank you, Laura. It started in like June of last year with the original Dark Zone Conjuring event, and then in October I went to the Queen Mary with the Dark Zone. In January I was in Montana investigating. So I want to say it's October because of everything that I'm doing this month, but it seems that just being able to virtually kind of share the paranormal with the world has really made things different.
But it's not over, but the lockdown, etc. is over. Everybody can kind of get out again and investigate, meet people, and do their thing. We'll wind it up there, Dog, for now. I'll just keep a hold of you just for a wee minute after we come off. That's all right. So thanks to everybody in chat that came in. Big thank you to Sophie Temperilli. I said it right again. So
yeah, you got it.
We're back on the 18th with a live on Hingenbrook House with Mark. So we're looking forward to that. We're not getting any lives next week. Sarah and I are away in Nottingham next weekend to film with GSI as part of they are on Paraflix, and they're doing a Halloween special which will be on the 30th and 31st, which will be getting shown on Amazon Prime. So we're not doing any lives next week because we're away down there and stuff. But thanks very much, Laura, Sky as well. We appreciate you all coming in. Take care. So again, thanks to Sophia and everybody in the chat and your comments, etc. And be safe, folks. And we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.